Throughout my time doing this work on social media, I've most certainly made a strong connection with the Muslim community. I see it as a great responsibility of mine, therefore, to be able to provide as unbiased of a perspective into this tradition as possible.
This is going to sound a little controversial. The Quran needs hadith more than hadith needs Quran. Let me say that again. The Quran needs hadith more than hadith needs Quran.
Inevitably, this kind of process will lead me into some more controversial topics, but this is never something that I will steer away from. If you're new here, my name is Malvi, and I have made it my life's mission to get boots on the ground and provide the best coverage possible of the largest religious traditions on the planet.
So just to summarize that a little bit, would you say that the biggest threat would be internal?
Yes, internal.
I'm here with Hadi and Abdurrahman. Hadi is actually the Muslim ambassador in the Discord community, and then Abdurrahman was one of our members as well. He's going to be filming. Hadi's going to basically take us around the masjid. May have a few questions when we're done doing that, and so we'll get into it. Did you grow up Muslim?
Yeah, I grew up Muslim. My family's Muslim. We've always been Muslim. But my family is pretty close friends with some intelligent Shia Muslims.
Have you ever had kind of debates with Shia?
With Shias, no, but with my Shia friends, we have more of discourse and conversations instead of debates.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, the primary difference between Shias and Sunnis is just sources against sources. Since basically I was a child, since I was born, my family's been in this area my whole life, so it's grown a lot. Before we didn't even have for our bathrooms, we only had 2 stalls, and now we have this gigantic bathroom there, so that's pretty cool. This is a big sign that just says Allah on it,
that's
like
what I
in
thought,
4 different ways, angles, I guess you could say.
That's very cool. I've never seen that kind of thing before. And then so
that is actually the first part of the Shahada. It says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Actually, the whole Shahada.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't read Arabic, so usually up something like that, I would see the Ayatul Kursi. That's normally what I'm used to seeing, above doorways. So it's interesting to see something different.
Yeah, but no, this is the doctrinal creed that all Muslims need to believe in order to be a Muslim.
Obviously, we got women's entrance over here. If anybody who's watching is not aware, within Islam, there's a heavy emphasis placed on respect of women. There's different gender roles than we may be used to in the West. You are to avert your gaze. Women are to pray separately, are to obviously conduct everything separately within the masjid. And so the men's entrance would be over here, and this is where we're going to be going into now. I actually have an Egyptian friend. We went to a mosque during Ramadan, this past Ramadan, and he made a joke that the husbands are always happy whenever they go to the masjid because they get to have their wife leave them to go to the woman's side to go pray. So another thing that you need to be aware of if you do enter into a mosque or a masjid is you need to take off your shoes. This is pretty ubiquitous across religious cultures. So this morning I actually attended Temple of Ishkan in Houston as well. And they do the same thing. I mean, it's pretty much a Western concept to not take off your shoes whenever you're entering a place that is even the homes, right? But especially a place of worship.
So as you can see here, we've got the whole mosque. This is actually a pretty big mosque. A lot of them are underfunded, but all praise due to God, we've received much funding. We've got big signs with the names of God, and we've got many books for people to read. Anybody can come, they can read it. We've also got benches for the evening classes where they teach the Quran. We have a thing called Hifz, which is when people of all ages, they come and they memorize the Quran from a person who has learned it, who is called a Hafiz.
So this is actually something that I've never seen in a mosque before. I've never seen the names of the prophets on a tile like this. And they're in English as well, which is very interesting. So are these the names in Arabic as well?
Yes. This is Sulaiman, which in English would be Solomon, as you can see.
Okay.
Over here is Zechariah.
Okay, so they're right next to each other.
Yeah, they're basically right next to each other. We've even got John too. John has a place in Islam as well, but not the author of the Gospel, but John the Baptist.
Right.
The one who came right before Jesus. He's also mentioned in the Quran, and there's a story with him as well.
Can you walk me through some of the books that we have over
Yeah,
here?
of course. I'll be honest, 90% of them are probably all Qurans. This one, for example, Tajweed Quran with meaning translation in English. So if you open it up, right? Let's open it. It has the primary source text with colors. Now, the colors are there to denote different rules of the Arabic language when reciting the Quran, because you can't just read it the way you see it. you have to read it properly in the way that was ordained by God. And outside of the white box, you can see the English translation of the very verses that are in Arabic. This is another shelf we have along the front wall that faces the northeast. We have many books here, a lot of which are the Quran. This one book here is the study of the Noble Quran. This is actually volume 3. But this is more of an explanation and kind of a book that studies the Quran. And it does talk about the Quran in Arabic, but it also has English commentary and English translation as well, as you can see. We not only have Qurans, but we have other books as well. We have what is called the Ma'ariful Quran, which is another series that kind of explains the chapters of the Quran in extreme detail. And this is written by Maulana Mufti Muhammad Shafi. And this is actually published by Darul Ulum, which is a very popular Islamic education center that has many locations. One is notably in Houston. And you can see that the first one is of Surah Al-Fatiha, Volume 2 is of Al-Imran, Volume 3 is Marida, and so on and so forth, with many different chapters.
This one right here almost looks like He-Man. You see that right there? That's interesting. Yeah, and then if we move down here, we have... So within Islam, there is the Quran, which is obviously going to be your clear-cut scripture itself delivered. Then you have your Hadith, which is the collected sayings of the Prophet. This is also would compile what is known as the Sunnah. So within the Sunni Islamic tradition, this is what is followed. And so there's a science to it. There is a exact science, Hadith science, as far as chain of transmissions go. It's called the Isnads. There is a clear organization to how these hadith are delivered. Within Sahih al-Bukhari, we see pretty much the most widely accepted collection of these sayings of the Prophet Muhammad and the companions, right? The companions of the Prophet, these are known as the Sahaba. So if we can just skip to random in here, you do see that we have both in Arabic and in English as well. You said that this right here used to be a bathroom.
Not this area, that area actually.
This area. Oh, okay. So whenever we first enter right here, this little, what is this? It's a wooden.
This is actually the office of the resident imam, the main scholar of this masjid. When people have questions or when they need guidance, they seek guidance from this person here.
While we were at the mosque, there was actually these two Muslim gentlemen here that were performing a Dawa training. Dawa is, of course, the Muslim conversion process. And this specific one was tailored towards Christians, and it was called The Life of Jesus. So explaining Jesus from a Muslim perspective.
Now, if he accepts Islam, mashallah, this is great reward. If he doesn't, is Allah still rewarding you? He's rewarding you for your intention. And by the way, your intention will get you farther than your deeds. Our deeds are limited, but your intention is actually limitless. If you truly understand how to shape your intention is limitless. That's why there's so many degrees in Jannah that are reached through people's intentions.
Okay, so I am here with, what's your name?
Anwar.
Would you consider yourself a scholar within Islamic world?
No.
Okay. Pretty knowledgeable though. He is a sheikh, so this means
Sure.
he does help other people in their path of Islam to kind of answer these harder hitting questions. He has been in Dawa training for 20 years. He's been giving Dawa. In my area of study in the Abrahamic religions, I've come across, obviously a lot of conflict between, primarily conflict between Christians and Muslims, right? I see it as a tragedy. I feel like there's so much more that Christians and Muslims can align on than not. For me, what I've seen, keeping a fully objective approach to it, within Islam, the biggest point of contention is the hadith, right? Because you look at a clear-cut Quran, it's very straightforward, it's simple, but whenever you get into hadith, that's what's most problematic, especially for the Christians who take the time to look into it. So one of these primary things that's been in my interest lately as I've been studying hadith is the incident of ifk. So whenever the allegedly Aisha committed adultery. It is also recorded in hadith that he was upset at Aisha as well. And so people have used the argument to say that he waited until she had her menstrual cycle again and did not get pregnant. But if he really was a prophet of God, he would have spoke out against it sooner and not waited for the Quranic revelation that we do receive. So how would you respond to this? Because it's very complicated. I've seen primarily ex-Muslims present this. So what would you say to this?
Really? I'll tell you this. There's plenty of actually good Muslim sources on the issue of Hadith al-Ifk. I will say some of the assumptions that I heard were kind of off.
Okay.
So, for example, that if he was a prophet, he would have known that she didn't commit adultery or whatever. That's actually not true. If anything, this actually proves that he is a prophet and he's being tested. Like we're all tested in this life.
Sure.
Right? Prophet Muhammad has his own test.
Sure.
And his test is more severe than ours. The most severely tested are the ones who are closer to God. And so the most tested people are always the prophets. We believe no one was tested more in their life than arguably Prophet Muhammad. Right? Lost 6 of his children during his own lifetime. They passed away. 2 of his wives passed away. They had to bury with his own hands. He grew up as an orphan, was ridiculed, mocked, expelled, assassination attempts, went through wars and battles, and got sick multiple times, was almost poisoned by his enemies, went through so much. And yet, we have some narrations that says, no one smiled more than he did. It's a test of his own faith to demonstrate that he can be patient. Not everything is the instant question. Was he praying to God to find out what the answer? Of course he was, right? He's a human being. And yet God is testing him and say, hey, you're going to be patient, you're going to endure, you're going to go through what everybody else might be in that situation. That's why he's a role model. I think that assumption that if he was, no, that doesn't prove anything actually.
Sure.
So this idea that the hadith is the most controversial thing in Islam, I don't think that's actually true.
Okay.
So in the Quran we have clear verses and ambiguous verses, right? How do I know what the ambiguous verses mean unless I go back to something that's also clear? In the hadith, we don't have ambiguous hadiths. Almost all of them are clear. In fact, more so than the Quran, which is why, and this is going to sound a little controversial, the Quran needs hadith more than hadith needs Quran. Okay?
It's interesting.
Let me say that again. The Quran needs hadith more than hadith needs Quran. Because the Prophet's job was to clarify the Quran. In fact, it says that in the Quran says, we revealed to you the guidance, the Quran, so that you can clarify to the people what it says. The hadith are not controversial. I think where the controversy, the problem is where people don't have solid foundations to actually know how to understand and how to process. There's a methodology. Just like there's a scientific method, there's a religious method to understand these texts. May Allah help and guide us and assist us, inshallah.
Thank you so much for your answer. I know you have to go, so I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Hadi, I appreciate you showing me around the mosque. And I want to say thank you furthermore for being a supporter of this project that I've been building, the Holy Cabinet. You were one of our earliest members, and so I just want to say thank you first and foremost for that. I want to let everybody who's viewing this publicly, who's not in our community, I want you to be able to kind of give some of your insights. Firstly, I would ask you, what do you think is the biggest thing that you would want non-Muslims to know about the Muslim faith?
The biggest thing is that many people, they obtain their source of religious knowledge about Islam from the news, from the politics, from the media. They portray Islam as something that it is not. They don't read the book, they don't read the Quran. In order to teach people truly what Islam is, we need 2 things. We need 1, we need religious literacy like Maulvi teaches. And 2, for the Muslims that we already have today to be the best versions of themselves that they can be. So that when they present themselves as acting upon the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, where they're, constantly smiling, where they have virtue, they have manners.
And why do you think that has been so lost? Why do you think that so many Muslims have become so separated from that way of thinking? Muslim creators tend to resort to aggression and resort to their accolades. I mean, obviously it's a problem in all religious traditions, but I think that Islam definitely has some maintenance to do. And why do you think that is?
I think, right, in every religion, across every profession, there's always going to be the knowledgeable people that are, they let the knowledge get to their ego, and the ego feeds, their behaviors. And ultimately, that's not the way that people should be behaving. Islam teaches that we should suppress our ego, that we should have control over it rather than letting our ego control us. The challenge with giving dawah is because most people are religiously mostly illiterate, they don't really know what Islam is about. They don't really know what it teaches aside from surface level, like I mentioned earlier. It's more of having the knowledge, but the way to articulate it, the way to approach a person, the way to talk to them, right? Just social skills in general. It's not necessarily that, oh, this argument here, this argument there. Islam says this, Christianity says that, Judaism says this. It's not really any of that. It's more of like, okay, how can I approach this person and start a conversation with them instead of transitioning it into something where that they feel attacked and they feel oppressed. We want to move away from this environment.
I think that a lot of the biggest issues could be solved by just better social skills in general. And actually attended, as you saw some clips of probably in this video, I attended this Dawa training event with Hadi earlier this afternoon, and they gave some really good points about approaching the conversation with care and just not allowing the potential revert or convert, whatever you choose to call it, to put that wall up, because that's when you won't make any progress. And above all else, I feel like that's one of the main ideas that I try to purport through my social media, is that I just want people to actually have productive conversation, because whenever you have talking to talk, you're wasting everyone's time. My closing out question for you would be, what do you think currently is the biggest threat to Islam?
The biggest division within the Ummah is, this is a controversial one, but it's the conflict of the Palestinian state and the Zionist state, right? There's Muslims that are supporting it, non-Muslims that are supporting it, other Muslim places that are not supporting it. Sometimes people might even go as far as to say that those Muslim places are supporting the Zionist state, which is against, our religion, against Islam. And this is one example that creates much division. But even within Islam, outside of a political context, we have things like the sects, the different sects, right? You have Sunnis and then you have different types of Sunnis. You have Shias, you have different types of Shias. You've got Sufis and you got different types of Sufis, right? All of these are stemmed from, most of the times, it stems from bantering that is not unbeneficial bantering, essentially. A famous Imam of one of the four madhabs, Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, too much debating belittles knowledge. And this is true if you look at it in a dawah perspective or in a preaching perspective, right? If you're going to preach any message, you're not going to debate the message right off the bat, right? You're going to have a conversation. You're going to have a nice conversation. You're going to welcome the person. You're going to do such things like this. So when you get to debates, right, nobody is really looking for an answer. Most of the times, it's just heated arguments that ultimately neither of the people on the opposing sides get convinced of the other one.
So just to summarize that a little bit, would you say that the biggest threat would be internal?
Yes, internal. It can also be things external, but ultimately those external things create internal conflicts, which is the biggest source of division within the ummah. We need to all unite, and we need to be one people, one brotherhood. And that is what the Prophet ﷺ, that's what he taught us, not to divide into different groups, into different categories.
So this trip I did find to be very insightful. I feel like more often than not, religious people, especially on the internet, tend to misrepresent their religion, and the perspectives that were shared in this video are largely underrepresented. So it is truly a privilege to be able to share such fresh perspectives, to be able to share these opinions that are largely unspoken of, okay? Proper representation of the faith, proper care put into these conversations. Many creators that we see today, not just Muslim creators, but creators from all religious beliefs, most of the time are just trying to satisfy their ego. They're trying to win an argument. As we discussed here, they are not actually intending to bring you to that same place of security that they have found within their faith. And to me, that shows me that they have a long way to go in their spiritual journey. And so it's truly a privilege to be able to highlight these perspectives in this manner for you guys. I look forward to being able to continue to break down these barriers of communication that have been built up within our society. If you want to support this, if you want to keep seeing more of this, please do subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.